Okay, my name is Oliver Enwonwu. I'm the director of Omenka Gallery, the CEO of Revilo Publishing, and I'm also president Society of Nigerian Artists. I also have a foundation that I run in honor of my late father, Professor Ben Enwonwu, and its objective is to preserve his legacy as much as possible. Well, I didn't quite start off as an artist. I started off as a biochemist. That's my first degree. I later studied applied geophysics, and then thereafter I went back to school to do the visual arts. I just completed my master's in visual arts at the University of Lagos. But the story of my art has always been from primary school through secondary school. I remember at King's College I used to do utility decoration for the hall, and I was involved in a lot of art projects as well. And then when I got to university, I found myself painting, maybe because I grew up under a father who was one of the iconic figures in Nigerian art. So I found myself painting. I enjoyed it very much, and even when I was in school studying something else, I continued painting and having exhibitions. Incidentally, my first solo exhibition was in 1999. When my father passed, we set up a foundation in his honor, and we've had annual lectures in his honor ever since. We've had a 9th annual lecture this year. So every November we have important people from different spheres of society come and talk about art and its role in shaping society positively. We've had speakers like Bruce Mbakweya. We've had people like Professor Yemi Oshibajo, the former Attorney General of Lagos State, come and talk about art. It's not just arty people that talk about art. We've got people because we want to show, we've got other people in different disciplines because we want to show the role of art in changing society. So that's one aspect that I'm involved in. I mentioned Revilo Publishing, in which we publish books on art. And you can see they're all related because here we are promoting the legacy of an iconic art figure, and at the same time we're publishing books on artists, on art exhibitions, catalogs and art exhibitions and things. So our roles, what we do is kind of related. Yeah. And we also have the Omenka Gallery is one of the leading galleries in Lagos, where we have exhibitions for established as well as emerging Nigerian artists. So our contribution is in promoting Nigerian visual arts, and as a huge part of the creative sector in Nigeria. Well, there are a lot of challenges. The major challenge that we have is funding. Of course, in this part of the world, there's always challenges with funding. It's an African country. There are more, in quote, the way the government sees it, there are more serious problems there. The basic problems that have to do with light, water, and to most African governments, art is a luxury. So the challenges are always there, especially in this part of the world. Well, I work in series. Right now I'm working on a series of paintings that are a metaphor for Nigeria. I'm just trying to show the state of Nigeria and how things are not quite working. So it's almost like a critique. My works have to do with identity, they have to do with social commentary, or what the goings on in Nigeria as a huge part of Africa. Well, I think the lines have been blurred a little bit. Fine art traditionally would mean the art of painting, the fine art of drawing, the fine art of sculpture. But these days things have broadened a whole lot, and in the world today globally it's getting smaller. The artist is somebody who has a vision, and there's art in everything. There's art in doing your hair, there's art in the way you speak, there's art in your body rhythm, the way you walk. And the artist is a bigger person than just a decorative person who's just doing things to decorate a place. And art has gone way beyond just being decorative. Art has lots of purposes, from the political to the social, social commentary, political. If you go back to ancient Benin from time, you see how the Oba was able to show his power in office with the relief sculptures around the world to show conquest, to show the history of the kingdom. Art is about recording and documenting life. So art is a lot broader. So the artist is a much bigger person now. The artist, I see the artist more as a statesman. So I say fine art is just, in my own definition, the finesse that you bring to life. Simple activities that people, the art the art of speaking, the art of relating with people, the art of even walking, the art of how you do your hair, even the art of governing. There's a fine art to it. So I'd like to see fine art as a much broader, with a much broader definition. I'd prefer to see that. Well, I think the Nigerian creative sector is on the rise now. Nollywood is, I think, is the second largest movie industry, if I'm correct. The visual arts sector is doing extremely well now. We have the auctions, as I mentioned earlier. We've got publications, publications, books and things of higher quality now, exquisitely produced books that you see around. Exhibitions now come with exquisitely produced catalogs as well. So I think the visual arts sector is doing very, very well, and I'm really proud. The professional bodies like Society of Nigerian Artists, they're beginning to have a clearer vision for the Nigerian artist. And then even every weekend also you see exhibitions, being held in various galleries across Lagos and indeed Nigeria. We also have an art fair, or rather two art fairs. There's Lagos Photo, there's the Nigerian Art Expo. So I think that the creative sector is really on the rise now. With more funding, more partnership with the private sector, I think there could be more room for growth, maximum potential. I think that we need more art fairs. I think that we need more companies to be involved in production, documenting our artists and documenting our art. I think it's very important. I think the press, who has been doing a wonderful job, need to be more involved, because art is all about sensation. So the more sensation caused by the press, I think, the better for the industry. I think there needs to be an endowment fund for the visual arts. I think that's very important, because artists and practitioners can get funding from the endowment fund. You can apply for fellowships, you can apply for grants, for projects, and that will bring more opportunities for mentorship and huge public projects as well as research and scholarship. So I think that's very important. The way the government could do that, maybe they could have tax exemptions for some particular companies or organizations, or reduction in tax. They could contribute towards an endowment fund. So these are things that happen in other countries, and I want to see that sort of thing happen here in Nigeria. And hopefully we want a Nigeria where one day an artist can walk up to a bank with collateral with his artworks and say, I want to borrow some money, and his work is given that value. So I think these things are very important. I think that's how, with more government and private sector partnership, I think the sky is the limit for the visual arts and the creative industry at large. Well, there are lots of opportunities in the visual arts sector. With the industry growing, there are opportunities for restoration of artworks, because you have the auction now. So there's some books that come into the market now, you want to be quite sure they're original and they're in good state. There's room for authentication, there's room for evaluation. The critics now have a field day, because art is on the rise now, so they need to write some artists into history. There's room for publishing books now. There's room for magazines now, because there are art events almost every weekend. And then because the visual arts is gaining increased visibility and appreciation, there's room for art fairs, and all these little pockets of opportunities create more opportunities for other people. Even the librarians have work to do now, because there's a spate of publishing now. So they have to catalog all these books, document properly. Those who are into distribution, the publishing companies that would arise. So the opportunities are enormous. I believe so much in reading. I have a massive library, so I spend most of my spare money on buying books. I try to educate myself. I try to see what my international counterparts are doing. I think it's very important, and I think that once you enter the habit of reading, even if you don't travel much, expand your mind, so there are new opportunities to see what other people are doing. You learn to improve on what you're doing, and knowledge is power. Once you can create that habit of reading, the opportunities will come. You expand your mind, I think it's very important. So that's one major habit that we should all imbibe before going to go forward. You need to see what other people have done, and even if you imitate, it's much better than being static. You learn to imitate properly, and then in imitating, then you create, because there's always going to be a difference. So I think it's very important. Well, I think my best advice is to be dogged in whatever you're doing, and make sure that in whatever you put your hands into, if you're a carpenter, if you are into anything, you know, you make sure there's a degree of excellence, because your works always speak after you. And that's why the visual artist always puts his best into a painting. He never quite finishes a painting. You literally have to rip it up away from him, because you know, he knows that once he passes on, his works are his ambassadors. So I would just encourage most other people to, in other creative businesses, to imitate the visual artist, who knows that once he passes on, you know, his works are his ambassadors. So he puts every ounce of energy into a particular work. And at the end of the day, your work speaks for you. It creates opportunities for you. And just like in the Bible says, show me the works of your hands, and I'll create, you know, the opportunities before kings, and you sit before kings. And that's how the visual artist thinks, and that's how I think every person into creative business should think as well.